Hello, everybody, and welcome to our live stream Q&A for writing the feature. Well, it's a Q&A, and we're also going to do a little bit of a workshop,
Yes.
whether you decide to join or not, kind of just to give you a sneak peek.
Everything you need to know to write a feature screenplay right now.
Right now, super fast. But yeah, we're going to tell you about our theory and John's theory about screenwriting, which is exactly what you'll find inside writing the feature. And we're going to do the quick sneak peek fast version now. And we will do
the... What is writing the feature?
Here we go. I'm so glad you asked, Adam, with my slideshow. Oh, look at that. I've become a slideshow queen.
Well, what is writing the feature?
So, look how cheesy I made this.
Wonderful. So what is writing the feature?
So writing the feature, Adam, is a 10-week completely online course. Technically, it is at your own pace. We release the content 1 week at a time, but you're more than welcome to go slower than that. You just, go at your own pace. There's 3 feedback opportunities throughout. And the thing is that it is taught by NYU Tisch film professor John Warren, who is amazing. He teaches, obviously, at NYU Tisch Film. He is a screenwriting professor in the undergraduate film department. He's been the head, or he's been in charge of the department. He's done a lot of great stuff in addition to being a professional screenwriter and professional producer, director, and he teaches all over the place. But yeah, basically he is teaching this course. And
this course is pretty much the equivalent of his advanced screenwriting class at NYU.
Yes, which is why I have the cheesy numbers written there. Because one time I looked up how much I paid for it and cried and wrote it down. And yeah. So I guess to tell you a little bit about, because I think it's interesting, maybe you do too, about why this course came to be. Basically,
tell us about what the course covers.
Well,
and how it's structured.
No, we'll get there. I think so. Basically, this course is. I was John's student for 4 years at NYU, and normally you don't have him all 4 years, but he's amazing, and so I chose to. And so he was my professor, and he just, everybody loves John. And making this course with him was a really cool opportunity, we thought, to make screenwriting more accessible to people, basically to anyone who doesn't go to NYU. That was the idea behind Young Screenwriters in the first place, was to make screenwriting more accessible. And that's definitely the idea with this course. And so what it was me, as someone who had John for 4 years at NYU, and Adam, someone who didn't, we sat down with John for several months and recorded one-on-one John's class. And the fun part about it was that since we were one-on-one with John, we got to kind of, push, ask questions. Anytime there was anything even remotely unclear, we could push John, ask questions, go deeper than he would normally go in class when you have a bunch of distractions. And that's what writing the feature came out to be, is basically one of John's ex-students and then another professional screenwriter sat down with John and recorded John going through his class and pushing him to go deeper. And that is writing the feature. It is a 10-week course, which matches, it's designed to keep you on pace with about how fast a professional would be writing a script for a project. And it takes you from no idea to finished screenplay. You can come in with absolutely no understanding of what you're doing, and you finish with a feature script. And I would say that a reason why this is particularly is different than other courses that I've heard of is that the thing that me and Adam were so picky about every single time that we would talk to John is being like, okay, this is nice theory. now what do I do? Right? Like everything is very, very focused on like, okay, that's great info in a vacuum. I understand the theory. What do I literally write down on my page now? And that's really what this course is focused on. Every single week has a different assignment. And it is meant to guide you to write your script. And I can show you what the curriculum is. Adam, do you have anything you want to add so far?
No, you're doing great.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much. All right. So basically, this is the inside of the Writing the Feature course. This is what it looks like if you join. And you get 1 week of content unlocked at a time. Everything is as a question, and basically you're just building on your knowledge as you go through. So the first week is really about your protagonist and what do they want? Why can't your protagonist have it? So now we're getting at, the plot. What makes them act? What is propelling your character forward? How does your protagonist respond? What changes the game? How does your protagonist transform? What does your protagonist's journey literally look like? We get into the specifics of sequencing and carding. Finally, we get into drafting, and we even do revisions and stuff about the industry, like what's next, like life as a screenwriter. We have a section called How Do You Fight Isolation as a Screenwriter, which is actually something that came up a lot. So we've really like revised this over the years to make sure that 2 years, to add in questions as they come up and build this and flesh out any questions that people have. So this is the inside of the course. Is this suitable for beginners? And here we go. So I will say yes, it is suitable for beginners. The thing I would recommend though is we actually have a free course, which I will grab. Adam, do you want to talk a little bit?
Yeah. So completely okay and designed for either beginners or intermediate level screenwriters. And one of the reasons why I would recommend a beginner to take writing the feature, if they are serious about writing a feature screenplay, is that the intermediate content will challenge you to push you farther. But Alexie is mentioning our free course, Writing the Short, which covers similar conceptual content on a much smaller, less challenging scale. That if you wanted to sort of get your head in the space of, what is a story? What is a screenplay? Like what is this format? Like I would highly recommend our free course first to sort of see if A, you like John and his teaching style, and also B, if you want to sort of explore that. That being said, writing the feature is a great way to learn. And there are lots of people who have taken it and really enjoyed it who didn't take writing the short.
Yep. So writing the short is the first thing that we ever did with John. That was really you can see what it looks like right here. Pre-pandemic, yes. So we were able to shoot it in his office. This is his office at NYU, where I met with him all those years. And this one is a short, free version of writing the feature called Writing the Short, where we basically just sat there and he goes over the elements of story and you learn how to write a short. And it takes about 5 to 6 weeks. You get feedback on your project, and it follows a very similar idea, as in everything is very, very focused on like what you tangibly do with the information. It's not just theory. So we really build it up. The first week you're thinking about your idea, then you're developing your log line, which is like a 1 or 2 sentence description of your movie that you use to sell your movie, to pitch your movie. Then we work on a pitch a little bit longer. We move on to a beat sheet, which is mapping out all the different beats that happen in your movie, or a Tentpole document, which we'll get into in a second. And then finally your script. And this whole course is free. I can drop in the link. You can take it anytime. And this can give you a sense of if you like John's style. And it'll also familiarize you with the terms that John's going to be using. Adam's right, though. We do define everything. You don't need it. But if you came in knowing the stuff from this course, it would be beneficial.
Well, I would say, writing the feature stands alone. You can take it. And I would
you
recommend
absolutely
it.
can.
If you were like, I want to learn how to write a feature screenplay now, do writing the feature. Another question we'll answer is if the course updates in a year, will we have access to the update? You have access to writing the feature forever upon purchasing it and all future iterations.
Yep. All edits, everything. If you bought it and then you can't touch it for 3 years, you would come back in 3 years. And as long as Young Screenwriters is still alive and kicking, we will still give you feedback. So that brings us to this question.
So actually, I think there are 2 feedback opportunities in writing the feature. There's the logline assignment, and then there's the tentpole assignment.
Is there? Yeah. I wrote on our, maybe I didn't update it right.
Well, anyway, we made that change ages ago. But regardless, so both of these feedback opportunities are specific to the project you're working on. It's it's an exercise where we sort of have a conversation about your via email about your story idea, the log line, and the obstacles in your story. And the second idea is just feedback on your outline for your movie. So really talking about the concept. We aren't currently for writing the feature, reading feature screenplay drafts. That would not scale well.
No, that is the. So if we want to keep the price point at 97, then yeah,
if you want to get your writing read, and in the Young Screenwriters Discord, we do workshops often, and people will bring in writing, and we're gonna do a lot of that. So there are opportunities to do so on the Discord.
Yeah, we do like live free workshop reading stuff, like where we read people's scenes. So you can jump in on things like that. And there's also a script swap in there where I know that where we have a pretty big community of people who want to read scripts to get better and give notes to get better themselves and vice versa. So you can, pop in there and get your script read if you would like to. Let's see. But yeah, that's the Discord. If you want to join our little community, that's completely free. Writing the short's free, and writing the scene.
Writing the scene is great if you want to learn about the technical aspect of screenwriting, like actual scene writing. How to it's a style guide for screenwriting, and it's also about the craft of writing scenes as like the fundamental building block of screenplay. It was actually designed as a week of writing the feature that we made a standalone free course for people. So if you are curious about writing the feature and want to know, hey, maybe I want to try it out, writing the scene was designed as one of the weeks of writing the feature. So it's a good way to try it out.
Yep. And it's a really cool, we worked really hard on that one.
That's a good one.
I really love this one in particular, because to me, this little mini course, the writing the scene course, was, me and Adam have read a lot of screenwriting books and have I went to film school. Adam has studied on his own through different means and gone to classes and things like that. Something that I always felt was missing was what we talked about before with like the practicality. So writing the scene is very much like, okay, you understand what should be happening, but literally beyond just formatting, how do you write a scene? Like, what is the scene description meant to be like? Like, what is good scene description? What does it look like? How long should it be? All those things like that. What's it for? Yeah. Let's see. The theory. Oh yeah, that whole thing. So I wanted to talk now a little bit about our approach to screenwriting, John's approach to screenwriting, and how it may be similar and different than other people's approaches to screenwriting. Adam, do you want to?
Yeah. So first of all, I would say John Warren's course is 90% of the language is extremely consistent, both from a definition point of view and from a usage point of view, with professional screenwriting terms that are you here in Los Angeles for spec screenplays, for features in general. the difference, I would say, fundamentally with John's approach is that he has a very functional, we here intentionally used extremely non-ambiguous language to deal with concrete like concepts like character development, character arcs, story, plotting out act two, these very difficult problems that a lot of people are very vague with. But the fundamentals of the language, like we all think, we'll use language like inciting incident, midpoint, because that is what those things are, right? Overall, though, at the end of the day, the important thing about any screenwriting approach is that it is descriptive of great art and not prescriptive, right? There's more than one way to tell a story. And this is not the only way. John Warren's course is not the only way to think about screenwriting. And what we actually don't want you to, unless you're just starting out, this is the first time you've taken a crack at it. Our goal isn't we're going to make everybody write screenplays exactly this way. Our goal is, here are a bunch of tools that may or may not be helpful to you in your journey as you write and tell stories. Some tools you might really gravitate towards and really help you tell your stories. Other tools might not. That being said, John Warren's course is extremely protagonist-centric. It's extremely change arc-centric, which is the most common type of story, but it's also the prevalent storytelling form of Hollywood and American film and television industry. So it's very useful. And the other thing I'll say is that John Warren's approach is extremely front-loaded in the sense of it is outline heavy and it is conceptual working out of things heavy. And it's not so much a discovery writer process. And there are many wonderful writers who are discovery writers. They'll do 20 drafts. Greta Gerwig is a great example, right? She'll say, well, I need 3.5 years and I just need to write a 500-page document where I just find the story. I'm not going to outline it. That's a legitimate way to write a story. John's approach is extremely professional and workmanlike. Be like, okay, 12 months, I'm going to break this story. I'm going to find it. I'm going to execute it. We're going to figure it out ahead of time. And then we're going to draft exactly what my plan was. And that's not for everybody. But the tools from that approach, I think it's one of the cleanest, most logical and efficient ways to learn how to write a feature screenplay. And the language is extremely accessible and functional and logical. It's great. So how was that for a pitch?
That was great. So this is let's see. I wanted to pull this up real quick. Rachel says character-driven rather than plot-driven. I will say, no, but it's so basically what we say is that plot should come from character. So the plot and the character, we imagine them as two tracks, right? You have your character's emotional arc, and that's one track of your screenplay. Then you also have the track that is much more tangible. It's focused on what normally people would call the plot, but it's like the tangible objective. It's the journey, it's the obstacles, it's that kind of a physical journey. Yes. So we have the emotional journey and the physical journey. Our theory says that everything should be completely interconnected. Sometimes films, you have these two tracks that are more separated. An example that I think of immediately is always Die Hard, where, the physical track is he's like inside this building fighting terrorists and blah, blah, blah. The emotional track has a few points where it touches on that, but it's about his wife, right? He has like that whole like inner journey with his wife, and he's also talking to the cop who accidentally killed a kid. And he has this whole this emotional thing. It's a separate track. When people talk about character-driven films, a lot of times what they're talking about is that it feels like it's really heavy on the character track rather than the plot track. So like rather than it being like a bunch of external action, it's really about relationships and things like that. And then your action movies, what people kind of mischaracterize as high concept, but we'll say high concept, people think of stuff that focuses on the plot, right? Yeah. We're not character driven in that we don't focus on the plot. We're character driven in that we think that every single thing in the objective physical track should be serving character. You should have those things stacked on top of each other as much as possible. And we find that the most like authentic place to start with that, because it's a puzzle, but the most authentic place to start is the protagonist, and to really build out from there. So it's protagonist driven in that way. It's protagonist centric, not driven. Does that?
Here's another way to think about it. Character. How we digest and understand a character in a movie is through the choices they make, and the choices they make are the plot, right? They're like what they're doing along the way. So basically, we believe that plot should reveal character through the choices the character makes, and being intentional about, okay, well, what type of person is this? What do they believe about the world? What do they lie? What's the lie they tell themselves? And how do we make sure that their choices are aligned with that character on a consistent and deep level? Like, so there's never a moment, like Alexie was saying, where the plot isn't connected to character. Like, then we think the best stories, that a lot of what in Netflix, everybody's saying, oh, we want character over plot. What they mean is they want the character driving the story. And they want the character driving the plot. They don't want the plot driving the character. But you need a plot. Like the plot is how people track what's happening and care. If you don't have a plot, no one's going to care. And every story has a plot, even if it's as simple as Bob needs to climb the mountain. And what happens if they don't? Right? Like and to start thinking in terms of those dynamics. That's one of the things that John's class does really well. It lays out a very logical way for you to, like, for the first time, sort of be like, okay, well, who is this person? What do they believe? And what choices would they make because of that? And what obstacles can I sort of come up with to really test this person? Like, it's a very effective. It's a good way. It's a good way.
It's what the answer is that is kind of cheesy is that we don't necessarily do plot driven or character driven. We do protagonist centric, and protagonist is different than character in that it's an active, a protagonist is a role that you fulfill within a plot, right? So it's about it, like, who's active, who's pursuing a goal, who's changing. It accompanies it encompasses everything. So it's sort of like a cheater answer to be like, we're protagonist centric, but that really kind of gets to the heart of what John's theory is about. This is a good question. What are some of the best habits a writer can have to be able to consistently write every day? So I have thoughts. Adam has thoughts. We do touch on this some in the course because everybody has their own way. But ready for the stupid answer? That's true, but the answer that doesn't necessarily help. The best habits are the ones that help you write.
Yeah.
And I think that people get really, really caught up in like what that should be. But that doesn't mean that there's not something useful to be gained from trying what works for other people and figuring out what works for you. And the way that me and Adam write looks very, very different. Yeah. And so we have some suggestions in the course that we could talk about now, because why not?
So the first thing I would suggest is decide if you're a morning person or a night person.
Yeah.
No, really, I'm a morning. I'm a night person who can't write at night anymore because it fucks up my sleeping schedule. So I have to be right in the mornings or I won't do it. Right. So, and make time for it. Right. One of the best advice I ever got was to allow yourself to just create time without pressure to play. Like, give yourself time without your phone, without your internet connection, and I actually write longhand when I try to write longhand because I'm not interfacing with technology. I'm not getting like disruptions. I can actually focus for an hour on one thing. But let's just say you make your space. You decided you want to be a morning writer. You take 2 hours, and this is the good nugget that really helped me. Allow yourself to do one of two things. I think Neil Gaiman first was attributed with this, but it really works for me. Write or do nothing. You will let yourself, no music, no internet, nothing, just sit there. And eventually, writing is more interesting than just sitting there. You know, you'll start thinking, you'll become bored, and becoming bored will help you enter a state of play. We so rarely are bored in our lives. We so rarely experience boredom as adults with smartphones and jobs and life and, you know, obligations. To create like a little bubble of time where you let yourself, you could start writing right away, or you could just sit there and do nothing. I think it works. It helps my brain. That's how my brain gets. And even if you're not writing like pages, write about the story. Think about, you outline your story, like daydream about the story. You'll make progress. You'll start like making connections. You'll start thinking about your endings, your beginnings, your middle. Even if it's not in like this structure here with the tentpole, you'll be dreaming about the story. And the more you dream about the story, the more you actually do it. That's my 2 cents.
Mm-hmm. And for me, I also do longhand because I found it more helpful to not be able to edit myself. I write in a notebook with a pen, and yep. I have one notebook per project, and that really, it helps me like feel like, oh, this is special, this is cool. I can keep all my notes in here. And I'm also like a sci-fi world building writer, so I have like a lot of backstory that never ends up in the script. My habit that I developed in college was I was always so tired that I'd fall asleep if I tried to sit down to write. So I would go like walk or like ride like one of those stationary bikes when I was trying to brainstorm. And I wouldn't do music or anything. I would do something like that that's like really, really repetitive. And that's how I would have to write for the most part. That's at least how I would think. When I actually had to like sit down and type, I would sit down. But it helped my brain work to be like sitting on a stationary bike. But a lot of people schedule the same time every day. Some people fit it in when they can. Really, I would try what people recommend. If it sounds like it could work for you, I'd try it, and make sure you try it for a good amount of time to actually give it time to work, and then take what works and leave what doesn't. But there's no best way to write. And anybody who tells you have to get up at 5 every single day in order to be a writer or you fail.
Unless that's how your brain works. Unless that's what works for you.
You don't have the royal you.
Yeah, the royal you.
Does not have to. Okay. So I hope that helps. If you have any more specific questions, we'd be happy to take a stab at.
Yeah, I love talking about this stuff.
Yeah, we could talk about this all day, and might make a course about it. Fun fact.
So what's this document, Alexie? Tell us about this document we created.
So this document here, I'm actually going to show you. This is something that we call a tentpole document, which is something that this is one of the things that is unique to what we do, in that we organize it in this particular way, but none of the content in this is, revolutionary. Nobody's ever heard of it. It's really just a way to organize information that you hear in a bunch of different places, put it into one document, and it is your movie. A tentpole document, in theory, it's called tentpoles because it's like, imagine that your movie is held up by a series of tentpoles, and those are the most important core parts of your movie. It's none of the little connector pieces. It's none of the transition scenes or the establishing shots. It is, what do you absolutely need or your whole tent's going to come down, right? So that's what we call a tentpole document. And a tentpole document is here. Basically, we have it broken down into Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and it looks pretty simple. And what's really neat about this is, this is, once you fill this out, once you know this, you know your movie, which means it's deceptively simple, right? Well, it's not just, it is simple. It's not easy. Basically, this is you putting all your different puzzle pieces onto 2 pages and laying out your movie from beginning to end. And this is where all the really, really hard work is. So I have this one here, which defines all of the different, what's it called? All the different elements of story. These are called elements of story, like protagonist, flaw, inner need, things like that.
People also call them beats,
or beats. Yeah, this is kind of, it's not a beat sheet because, like I said, we're not going scene by scene.
It's a simplified beat sheet.
Yeah, but it's a simplified version of something like a beat sheet, and I figured we could use this one as an example if we wanted. to kind of talk about what a tentpole document is.
Okay.
So this is for E.T. Let's see. I just sprung this example on Adam, so Adam, hopefully you're down to do some.
The last time I watched it was 2005.
Oh, okay, perf.
Yeah. I remember
we're not,
2 things about it.
We're not gonna go super into the weeds, so it should be fine. But this is our outline of E.T. based on a tentpole document. So your protagonist is Elliot. He is a little boy, and I believe we have fatherless and friendless because that came from the script. A fatherless and friendless little boy. The thematic question. So this is like the core question that this movie is really getting at. In our point of view, our analysis is, what should you do when someone you love wants to leave? Right? So for us, a thematic question is a question that's at the center of your movie, and all the different core characters, all the most important people in the story have a different answer to this question. And in order for it to feel like it's a well-rounded, developed movie, so that it doesn't feel like it's preaching or something like that, you need to have a thematic question that has many plausible, valid answers, right? Where it's not just like, should you be nice to people? And then the only possible answer is, well, like, yeah, probably should. Like, should you just kill people? And the answer is no. That's probably not a great thematic question. It should be a question that you have a lot of possible answers to. And also you can tell that we did this for our live session because I wrote in, but worded more fancy. But anyway, so for this one, thematic question is, what should you do when someone you love wants to leave? And at the very beginning of the film, we have Elliot's flaw, which is that his answer is, you don't let him go. He doesn't want to let go of people who want to leave, right? So at the very beginning of the film, he has one answer. Over the course of the film, he learns a new answer. He learns that sometimes if you love people, you need to let them go. And he learns that through E.T., and it's really related to his relationship with his dad. And that's how we think about character arcs and how we think about change. So in this case, the mentor is E.T., is the alien. That's who Elliot is going to learn this from. The mentor, in our understanding, isn't necessarily like the wizened character. They don't even necessarily have to like seem mentor-y. They're just the character who holds the protagonist's inner need. E.T. is going to be the one to teach Elliot to let go of people that he loves. We talk about the normal world, which is where we start the story. It's where the status quo exists, right? So the normal world is what allowed this flaw to exist. So the reason, like, Elliot believes that he shouldn't let go of people in this normal world. This normal world is suburban California. He's excluded by his older brother. What?
He's clingy.
He's clingy. Yeah, he's trying to never let people go, right? That's the world that he's in, where he has to be super clingy. We have an inciting incident, which is what breaks the status quo, right? Our inciting incident is that he sees E.T., this alien, in a shed. 1 second. So it's the moment that turns his world really upside down, and it creates a problem that he can't ignore. So he sees an alien in the shed. Yeah, he can't ignore that. There's this beat right after that we call the response. Some people call rejecting the call. So I guess this is a good point.
That's the Joseph Campbell terminology.
We try to really like neutralize everything to like make it just as like descriptive as possible and not putting any kind of connotations on it.
One of the problems with the hero's journey and the language it's presented and taught with is that it's got like a lot of Jungian psychoanalysis terms that aren't necessarily helpful from the point of view of like, using definite like terms in context of like a workman like approach to screenwriting. You know, like, oh, well, is this the moment we meet the goddess? No, it's the fucking midpoint. Sorry, I'm yeah, like that's kind of what we mean. But like an act one break is the moment we transition from act one to act two. Sorry, continue, Alexie.
No, absolutely. And so that is, so in the response, we have this moment where, you know, change in life is hard. No one wants to change. If you wanted to change, people would do it all the time, and we don't, as we all well know. And if it was easy to change, then you wouldn't have a movie, and that's what a movie is about.
That's right.
So I guess that's another note about our approach, is that it really, we do zoom in on psychology quite a bit, thinking about like why people change and why people don't. But so we have this response moment where the protagonist is hesitant to react to this new information, hesitant to accept it, just rejects it. Typically, sometimes the response is a little nuanced, but that's that beat. And in this moment, Elliot says, he tries to tell people that it happened. He's trying to like get other help, but nobody is going to believe him. Then we have the call to action, which is when we're about to break into Act 2, and that is when he actually finds E.T. And this is the moment where he is going to commit to an objective, and you're going to commit to it at all costs. All right. So in this moment, he commits, I'm going to help E.T. go home. Let's see. I have the window. I have to scroll. Oh, and we separate, just for help with this, the thing with the objective is we feel it's like one of the most important part of your protagonist's journey. The protagonist is the character who is active. They're the ones who changes. They're the ones who make the decision. You know, even when you have an ensemble cast, a lot of the times you still have a protagonist. You still have one person who is actually the one making the decisions, calling the shots. They're the one who changes. They're the ones who has the highest stakes. So that's what a protagonist is. And they're the ones who has the objective. And the objective, this is something that John is very picky about, is that the objective is a tangible, specific, nearly unattainable, and important goal. So something that is tangible, specific, nearly unattainable, and super important to the protagonist. And in this case, it's getting E.T. home. That's super tangible. He's got to get E.T. back to, got to get E.T. off the earth, back to his people. It's specific. We know when that's going to happen. Like, we will be able to see it happen. It's not just like, I'll give an example of what it's not in a second. Unattainable. It is almost impossible to get this little alien back home, as we're going to see. That's what gives us enough stuff to work with to make a full movie. And it's important. If he is not returned, he's going to be taken by the government and probably experimented on and tortured on. It's going to be very, very sad. Adam, do you want to give an example of a not great objective and why it doesn't work?
Love.
We sound so
brother.
cynical.
No. I mean, like anything that's not. So the thing about objective is that it is the plot of the movie. And if you make something abstract, if you make it emotional, if you make it vague, like, okay, he's going to become a millionaire. Oh, okay. Well, that's an objective. No. It should be the suitcase of $100,000, or it should be the dream job. It should be the corner office. It should be the the special, activation key that will open up the thing you want. It's like all of Act 2 is an escalation of stakes and obstacles, or I should say it's an escalation of obstacles with stakes that ramp up to a moment of extreme climax and force the protagonist to change. And what are the obstacles for? The objective. So in this movie, if his objective is to help get E.T. home, all of these obstacles, all of Act 2 is going to be a series of obstacles for that one objective. And as he progresses, he is going to have external stakes, whether it's the police chasing him. He's going to have emotional stakes, his family feeling like being afraid, the family obligations pushing against him, and also like philosophical stakes about sort of being like, I'm going to protect this alien. Forgive me if I'm missing something I haven't seen in a long time, but like I'm going to let go of this alien too. Will I let that go? And those philosophical stakes are tied back to the flaw of the character, and that's when you start getting really meaningful connections and like nuanced, deep interconnectivity in your story. But Act 2, where do these obstacles come from? They come from the antagonist character who is most opposed to, or say is most pushing back against that objective. The new world of Act 2, which is, he went from being alone to has an alien friend, and he's on the run. He was in basement hanging out. Now he's adventuring, breaking boundaries. He was trying to stay in the boundaries of his family. Now he's breaking the boundaries. The friends and enemies who may help this objective or push against the objective, but it's all hinged on the objective in a movie. First of all, not television. Television's different. But and all these obstacles, managing sibling reactions, hiding, connecting to ET, or having difficulty doing so, sneaking him out of the house on Halloween, flying together, making contact and trying to make the radio work, being stranded in the woods, culminates in the halfway point of Act 2, which is the midpoint, which is a change in the nature of the problem of the story. It's either a deep, oh my God, the rug was pulled out under us, or a huge success, but wait, not really. This is not what I thought it was, right? So a midpoint can be a lot of things, but the most important thing is that it's a shock and it changes the nature of the obstacles in going to after the protagonist, going after their objective.
Mm-hmm. And real quick, Spencer, so getting back with his girlfriend, would that work? Yes. So love doesn't work because remember what we said before, the objective should be tangible, specific, unattainable, and important. Love could be important. That's not a problem. Unattainable, if this person has like some reason why they're hard to love.
But a certain relationships that's specific, it could be all of those things to person. But love itself is not tangible, right? Yes.
Love itself, we don't know exactly what that's going to look like. When we see it on our screen, we don't know. Like how would you know that the protagonist in a visual medium has achieved just generic love? It would look much more specific than that. And so that's why we push you to choose a specific objective that's tangible. So getting back with the ex-girlfriend, yes, we could see that on screen. We could see them together, him saying like, do you want to go out with me? Her saying yes, them kissing, whatever it is, getting the specific person, that is an objective that works for a movie. Love in general, you're going to have to really fight to make that work. Because it's gonna basically you don't have like one specific target to run at. And keep in mind that a lot of what we talk about with story is it's not because that's not how life works. It's not because that's not how stories work. It's because movies are a 90-minute medium.
Or 2 hours.
2 hours, 90-minute to 2 hour medium. It is story has like an organic shape to it, and when you make it fit within 90 minutes, it has a pattern that it tends to fall into, and you just don't have time to do justice to a bunch of different objectives to a more wandering journey. If it was going to be love, maybe you should write a novel.
Those points of engagement all are very logical, right? Like, okay, you're rating a 90-minute to 2 hour movie. What are the questions that an audience would have, right? Who's this about? Why should I care? What's going to happen next to them? Those questions hinge really well on a singular, concrete objective that a protagonist can make progress to or not make progress to. Because they're like, oh, did they get the thing? Oh, did they get the suitcase with $100,000? Is a lot easier for somebody to grapple their mind on when they're just meeting new characters, they're meeting a new world, they're meeting a new social dynamic, they're meeting like they're entering into this world of your story. It's a very functional reason for that. It's not an arbitrary one. It makes sense based on the technology and the context of a person watching a 2 hour story.
So one one thing I want to put in this category for showing that this is a little bit tangential, but like that this is truly the case, that this is how it shakes out. We were talking about Greta Gerwig before. Was it Lady Bird that was like 300 and something pages?
She says all her scripts are, she doesn't outline it, she just sort of.
So Greta Gerwig doesn't think about this stuff beforehand, right?
She thinks about it after.
Exactly. But yeah, when she goes from having like this big story, by the time she whittles it down, Lady Bird has a tangible, specific, unattainable, and whatever objective, right? Go to NYU. They don't name it NYU, but
it is, yeah.
But it is, and so that's her objective. When you get down to it, that's what ends up happening, and that's the case with a lot of stuff. With like Miyazaki. Miyazaki also doesn't necessarily do like these outlining processes. Adam knows a lot more about Miyazaki than I do, but when you see the final product and you describe what is happening, you can see that it ends up falling into these categories. That doesn't mean that that's how he designed it. Again, we're just describing this phenomenon that happens, and we're showing you one way to write into it. Let's continue with the Tentpole document. So the new world. Remember how before we said that the ordinary world, the normal world, is the protagonist's comfort zone. That's where they develop their flaw. That's where their flaw is helping them in some way, to get into the psychology of it. In order to start shaking things up so that they can change, you have to put them into a new world where now this flaw is not so good for them. If you really want to psychology it becomes a maladaptive coping mechanism. But we don't have to get too into all that. So you put him into a new world where things are different, where the rules change. And that's where we have him caring for the alien. You have an antagonist, and remember a thematic question from before, which was about when something you love wants to leave, what do you do? We have a different answer coming from our antagonist, E.T.'s alien friend who abandoned him. LOL. Although I think that maybe we analyzed that wrong. I think it might be like one of the cops or something. But I would have to.
Movie 2005.
I know. I need to remember. But anyway, who holds a different belief? And then now let's get into the second half of Act 2. So at the midpoint of Act 2, what Adam said, you have something that fundamentally changes the rules of the game. So it does a new world where the protagonist had just gotten kind of used to things, finally started making some progress. Now we're back at ground zero. He loses E.T. So his new world, where he's being pushed even harder, is now he's missing the alien. They're both getting really sick. If you remember this part, when they form that connection. So now they're both really sick and dying. There's new obstacles. We have agents are showing up to the house. You're meeting these special agents. E.T.'s dying. The boy's dying. Everything's bad. He gets captured. Then we finally get to the end of Act 3, which culminates in what we call an ultimate test. An ultimate test is the moment where your protagonist comes face to face with their objective and fails because of their flaw. Or they suffer an internal loss because of their flaw. Basically, their flaw keeps them from getting closer to their inner need. So in this case, we have that Elliot and E.T. are captured by agents. Nobody will believe Elliot, and Elliot still wants E.T. for himself. So E.T. dies. Elliot isn't ready to let go of E.T. yet, and so it seems like E.T. is dead. So again, remember his flaws, that he can't let go of people he loves. So he's failing here. And so because of this, he suffers an internal loss. E.T. dies. An alternative version of something like this is, in a sports movie, the classic example that we always bring up, but sports movie, the goal the whole time was win the championship. They, in this moment, maybe the main character had been really selfish, and they decide to keep being selfish, and they win, but it's hollow, right? It's an internal loss, regardless of what happens with the objective. And that pulls us into Act 3, which is all about the inner need. It is all about that internal transformation now. We hit an all is lost moment, which is a complete thematic, internal, external, philosophical loss. In this moment, your character has no choice but to recognize what you need to change in order to become a fulfilled person. So in this moment, it looks like E.T. is dead. It is super sad. And Elliot realizes that he should have let him go. He tells E.T. that he loves him, and in this moment, he is overcoming his flaw. Then you have this brief, sometimes it's pretty brief. This can happen really, really fast, by the way. Act 3 is very action-packed drama scene, very fast all at once. There's the all or nothing moment where now the protagonist is committing to overcoming their inner need. So now Elliot is ready to let E.T. go. He needs to go ahead and get E.T. He needs to help E.T. escape and get back home. So he escapes from the house on bikes. There's the final fight, which, Adam, do you want to...
Final fight is the moment where the protagonist finally proves that they have embraced their inner need and made their character arc. And usually it's a 2-minute sequence, which is most usually optimized by a massive failure, catastrophic failure, or huge challenge that tests the protagonist's deep inner depths, and they have to make a decisive action they would have never been able to make in Act 1 without their character arc. It's a decisive action that comes from their transformation that creates the unexpected success and earns the resolution of the story.
Mm-hmm. Which pulls us into the moment when... So for this case, the final fight is, remember, if you have seen the movie, this is like the iconic moment where Elliot has E.T. in his little in his bike, and they're going around. They're trying to bike around the cops. All the cops are showing up and trying to stop them. There's a massive roadblock of cops, but E.T. and his friends commit anyway, and they fly overhead. They fly by the moon, and they get E.T. back to the ship in an unexpected win. And the story resolves with Elliot letting E.T. go, and E.T. is gonna go home. And that is how that movie breaks down.
And this is just a very high level overview of these concepts that we cover in extreme detail. And John gives a lot of insight, and not just in his own process and lessons, but also his personal experience and anecdotes. There's a lot of real thought that into, okay, what is a protagonist? What is the mountain for your protagonist? What is the objective that you really want your story, not just the first assumption you make? And also just really concrete information about revising, editing, how to take notes, what a very workman's professional screenwriting approach that you can pump out a script in 2 months, 3 months, maybe.
So to kind of give you an example, here is inside of one of the lessons of week 1, where we're talking about the objective. This is what the inside of the course looks like. We try to keep everything super streamlined. This is not just us kind of rambling to hear ourselves ramble, but you get these videos.
It's a very logical arc through the actual course. And
I edited the heck out of John to make sure that we stick to only the most essential stuff.
That's right.
So this is what the course looks like. This is the section about objective that we were talking about, and we really talk about why. And we also have added in places where people have asked different questions. We even talk about what we were just talking about up there with up here with Spencer talking about the girlfriend. We say when dealing with a more abstract desire, create a tangible objective that symbolizes it or stands in for it. So instead of love, your objective could be kiss so-and-so, or instead of acceptance, it could be class president. Things that really make visual and tangible and real this internal journey of your character.
What you're doing as a screenwriter is your job is to externalize internal conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I just kind of wanted to show a little bit loosely what it is. We really take a close look at Into the Spider-Verse.
We have several example scripts that we expect people to learn from and sort of see through the lens of the course as we do the course.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, this is inside the course. Yeah, I think that's
it.
Let's see if we had anything else. Oh yeah, that was my last thought, was before you start, give writing the short or writing the scene a try to see if it's for you. I would say
Great.
writing the scene gets very like specific. Okay, here, awesome. So yeah, we'll do questions now. How do we understand the conventions of the genres that we choose?
Several ways. One, you research the genre you want to work in. This is a general rule of thumb, but if you're going to write a story in a particular genre, make it a genre you personally enjoy and get joy from. So you've already, if you watch a genre, you watch science fiction, you know the tropes, you know the conventions. You just have to analyze it critically. Take the best film you know from the genre you want to write in, and really critically view it and sort of see the choices that were made and ask yourself, well, why was this choice made? We also cover genre in this really good video in writing the feature. How to subvert genre, how to take the elements of genre and then like sort of create new narrative tension that is fresh for you. Like, how do you take something cliche, move it 20 degrees to the left and make it original? You know, that kind of stuff. But yeah. Well, thanks so much, everybody. Alexie, do you have anything else you want to cap off?
No, if anybody else has any questions, we can chill for a second. But yeah, I hope that this was helpful. I hope that this kind of showed, at a minimum, like whether you take the course now or not, or do something else first. I hope that this kind of shows a little bit about how we think about story, in case you join us for coffee class or anything else that we do. This is kind of the basics of how we approach story as taught to us by John.
Writing the feature as a course, it's extremely high value for what it is, in my opinion. I think, getting John's NYU course for like $97 is a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
And I also would challenge anyone who would take it to not just like skim it for information, but to actually write a project with the approach. And I think that's a good general rule Alexie says all the time. Anytime you read a new book on screenwriting, write a screenplay with that process. You can learn actually with experience and direct experience what works from it and what doesn't.
And that's a good way too to stop yourself from getting into like information hell, which I think is a thing that a lot of screenwriters and writers in general fall into, is that we have a tendency to get so stuck spinning our wheels and being like, I need to know more theory, I need to know how this works, that we just end up reading and reading and reading about writing and not writing. And so whether you do this course or a different course, or you read a book instead, or you read stuff online instead, challenge yourself to every single time you absorb, you're taking in new information, like you do something like a course or a book, that you write something with it. That way you don't get stuck spinning your wheels. This is a great question, Rachel. If we've written a novel, would this course be useful for adaptation? Yes. So I will say, yes, it will be useful. My note to you is adaptation is very challenging, because when you go from something that, like, in general, like a novel doesn't necessarily have the same constraints on time as a film, and novels obviously really, really excel at the internal life of characters, whereas films excel in the external life of characters and relationships and things like that. So when you're adapting your novel, make sure that you are willing to change things
to make it the best movie it can be, because because different mediums have different strengths. Novels have strengths that are exclusive to the novel form, and movies have strengths and weaknesses exclusive to the movie form. If you're going to adapt your own novel, you need to be playing to the strengths of the medium that you're working in.
Mm-hmm. My advice, which is not a rule at all, my advice for this course is do a fresh idea that is something that you want to see. Do a movie that you would be excited to go watch in the theater, that is very exciting for you. You can, but I would advise you not necessarily to do your big dream project first, as in like don't necessarily do your memoir for your first screenplay.
Lots of people try.
It's a very common thing, and I think it's almost like your first script almost inevitably becomes somewhat autobiographical, and I think that that's just something that no matter what you do, it's going to be autobiographical. But I think there's also like a real strong tendency to write about yourself in your first script, whether on purpose or not. Like, ask me how many scripts in John's class was about a film student who just moved to the big city, who is awkward but like really good guy trying to find love in the Big Apple. If only people would realize their genius. The answer is all of them. So it's just in order to really
boring idea.
Yeah, in order to really push yourself and to like make sure that you're able to do this, you're going to need your character to be flawed, really, really flawed, not just kind of flawed. You're going to need to be able to push them really hard. You're going to need to be able to play with things and say, should these characters that are two people that I know in my real life really be one person? It's just anything you can do to remove additional challenges for yourself, the better. So that's when I say start.
It's teaching yourself to go from, but that's how it happened, to I'm going to tell you a great story.
Yeah.
You know, right. Like, and taking artistic license to bend for the medium you're working on. This quick question, Spencer. Do you have any class discussions of the differences between film writing and TV writing? So we have a course on TV writing that's going to come out in the relative future. But we do talk about it on the channel a little bit. And in writing the feature, John does sort of talk about the differences, but not like how to write a TV pilot. That's a very different, very specific thing.
But we will get into that. And we could briefly say, I think we actually do talk about how to know if your idea is best for a film in the course.
Yeah.
But loosely, it's you want to focus on something that has one single objective, where you're really focused on one person's internal journey and maybe a couple relationships. The more you start dividing up between other characters, the less
TV.
That's much more TV, is really like relationships and like other characters and things like that. This is a question.
Yeah, this is a good question.
Can the objective be unclear for the protagonist and the audience as long as it becomes attainable and specific by the end?
No.
John says no.
One specific reason I would say no. The purpose of an objective is so your audience has a sense of progress through the movie, right? To the audience, it's all about and then what happens? And then what happens? And then what happens? It's like something to hang that mental feedback loop of, and then what happens on. If you don't have an objective, the audience is going to say like, oh, what are they doing?
Yeah. Have you ever been watching a movie and you're like, oh, I don't even like, why are they even doing this? Like,
exactly.
It gets really frustrating. But so there are some things that are not obvious to the protagonist. For example, the protagonist rarely knows their flaw, especially at the very beginning. Especially at the very beginning of the film, the protagonist almost never knows their flaw. They'll figure it out eventually, but it is not something that they're aware of. The inner need, John has a rule, you can't know it. If you knew your inner need, why wouldn't you fix it? So like if the protagonist truly believed like that they just need to accept themselves and like blah, 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 whatever the whole deal is, then you wouldn't have a movie. The whole point of the inner need is that they need to learn it themselves. They need to discover it themselves.
And this is not to say you can't have a twist or you can't have new information that changes the context of what we've seen before in a way that's surprising, earned, and appealing. But what it is saying is the audience has to understand why the characters are doing what they're doing and has to believe them. And the thing about a movie, at the very least, in creating a singular, tangible objective for your protagonist, the audience will be able to get invested in the plot and understand like, okay, this is why they're doing this. This is why I'm following this person around, and it may or may not be interesting.
So I'm going to drop in a link. You can access this whether you're in the course or not. This is a link to part of our script vault. Our vault is just like where we keep a ton of screenwriting resources, including hundreds of scripts. And you can check them out at any time, and we recommend you use it, again, whether you do the course or not. But this is a specific folder inside of the vault called Tentpole Documents, which used to be everything that we did every single Friday was breaking down a new movie. And doing its tentpole. So you can take a peek at how we broke down a bunch of these movies, even movies that you might think don't fit this, but when you really start picking at it, do.
Yeah.
And here is...
Let me answer this question. So,
oh, man.
The objective can change. It just needs to be clear why it's changing, right? So it's a rule that has been broken, but the rule is, generally speaking, for a Hollywood film, objective only exists in Act 2 or Act 2 and Act 3. Objective doesn't exist in Act 1 usually, unless you have a very short Act 1. And the reason why you don't change objective in Act 2 typically, you can have an objective not work out at the end of Act 2, and then we shift to a new objective. That happens all the time, but you typically don't want to break the objective in Act 2. And if it does break, it's more of like a reorienting of the same thing. Like an example is Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind. He goes from, I'm going to forget Clementine to actually, no, I desperately need to save this. But it's the same object. It's just he changes his why in the film. So like, there are films that do change objectives, but it's much rarer. I would say 98% of films don't. And for very functional reasons of like, if you, pacing wise, Act 2 is all about obstacles against objective. And if you change up the objective, the audience's sense of progress might get lost. Be like, wait, what are they doing now? Whereas if you I can break down 100 films off the top of my head that have objective be solid through all of Act 2, and then change the objective at in the beginning of Act 3 once they have their character arc, or they have the same objective as before but with new meaning.
Let me make sure I got this link for you. I just shared the vault link again.
Let's see if it works. Worked for me.
And then that link should be good too. And then, I should link to where you can get the course if you want to. That would be a good thing to have linked.
It should be at the bottom of this video, right?
It is, but also here. But yeah, John gets all in. This is something John in particular is very passionate about, the single objective. And he gets really, really into it in his videos. And we really try to like break down and explain why. And why a lot of times it feels like the objective changes, but it's like what Adam was saying, it hasn't really. Sometimes your motivation changes. A lot of times when the objective changes, it's actually going into Act 3. So it's something like, I got the job I thought that I wanted, but I learned that my kids matter more. And now Act 3 is running to get to Christmas in time. Your objective is still the same for all of Act 2.
The real answer is you've just got to break down a lot of movies and get really used to, really understand how movies work. Like for yourself, don't just take our word for it. Like use these beats or other beats or whatever, and just like take apart movies and like really interrogate why they work. I think the tentpole structure is the cleanest, easiest, best way to do it. You just watch a movie, fill out an empty tentpole while you're watching it, and you'll see patterns. If you do that like 50 times, you're going to see patterns, and it's going to be very interesting. Now, there's variation, and there are people who do different stuff. This is just one really clean, common way to do it. So it's
and it's a way that has the added benefit of really, really working for if you're writing to a studio deadline. So if you're hired to write a script, you'll probably get about 14 weeks. This will get you done in 14 weeks.
You don't have a year.
No. No. So that's the advantage.
On that note, we hope this was helpful for y'all.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that if you have any questions, feel free to bop into the Discord. I just sent that link, or you can email me if you would like. I will also include my email, and we will try to answer you as soon as possible. The course is now always open, but we decrease the price a little bit when we do these enrollment windows because it's much easier for
people to be like a class together.
It's a class, and then also because you get feedback on work, in order to kind of keep the price accessible, it's much easier for us if we're looking at content all at once. And you'll be interacting with Adam a lot if you're doing some feedback. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.